I am about to tear in to this 30-year-old Ford 351 Windsor. And I'm gonna bring you along to see what's lurking down inside of here. But I gotta get something out of the way right up front. I have never torn down an engine before, not once. So if you're here looking for decades of engine building wisdom, well, this might just be the most educational disaster you have ever witnessed. Yeah, and that's what I was afraid of. And that is why exhaust bolts are scary. Holy, busted my socket wrench. But if you're here looking for a regular guy who's going to crack open an old Windsor engine for the first time ever, you're in the right garage. Howdy folks, Ed here. Welcome back to Bullnose Garage. And see, here's the thing. I'm not just tearing this engine down and building it back up. I'm learning as I go. Now, I've done a whole lot of research. So, yeah, I basically know what order to do things in, what to look for as I'm doing it, what stuff I gotta keep, what I can toss, what stuff matters, what doesn't. You know, so if you've never done this before, then come along with me and hopefully you'll learn something. And if you have done a couple of engines like this before, you know, come along anyway, because you might learn something too. And if not, then you'll get to laugh at me or cry with me or who knows. But either way, you're gonna be entertained because this engine is gonna get stripped down to a bare block, built back up into a 408 stroker, and then dropped into my 85 F-150. Now, I have no idea what I'm gonna find when I crack this thing open. This might be like virgin Ford iron that's never been machined before, and that would be great, perfect for a 408 stroker build. But it may also be a disaster. I have no idea. Either way, this is the start of a complete series where I tear this thing down to the block, take the block out to a machine shop, get it machined for a 408 stroker build, and I'll show you guys how all that stuff works, and then bring it back, source the parts, build it up into a 408 stroker, take it out front over here and get it started on the stand, and then drop it into my 85 F-150, and then hopefully, take it out on the track and see how it does. Now, you guys that have been with me for a while know that I have been flapping my gums about this engine and just kind of putting it off for a long time. But as an old ex-girlfriend of mine used to say, don't talk about it, be about it. So, let's get to work. So the first thing that I'm going to do is start making some labels, some baggies, just to make sure that I know where everything goes. I probably won't reuse these. It's good to have them labeled just in case. If you're doing a rebuild and you're not putting on a bunch of new performance parts or whatever, you're just kind of doing a refresh, definitely make sure that you label and put away all the parts when you're doing this, even if you only got a couple of them. Say I've only got a couple of these rear head bolts, but at least now I know where they go. And since they're labeled, I can just toss them in a pile. Okay, so that's the simple part. The bolts are off. I'm just gonna start taking off some of the little greebles and stuff on here. Parts that you don't care about, I'll just bend to get it off of there. There we go. And motor mounts off. There's a motor mount, pretty crusty. So I will almost certainly replace the mount, but I'll keep the plate. Now for my application, which is putting this in a truck that has an inline 6, the motor perches do not fit. So I saved the perches from the mounting of this engine from the 96 F-150 that they were on so that I can attach them to my 85. Hey, dead bugs. Bonus. So while I'm over here trying to convince these exhaust bolts to leave the premises, let's talk about why these things are always such a nightmare. Ford didn't do anything wrong here. This is just what cast iron manifolds do after 30 years of heat cycles. You got steel bolts threaded into cast iron, the manifold acts like a giant heat sink, and every time this engine warmed up and cooled down, the threads basically just shook hands a little bit tighter. Add in some surface rust, a couple decades of New Mexico dust baking on there, and well, these bolts get real sentimental about staying home. Now the funny part here is how they sound when you're breaking them loose. The first few on this side creaked and groaned like an old door hinge on a haunted house, and that's actually good. It means they're moving. They're not happy about it, but they're still participating in the conversation. What you don't want is that quiet turn where the head spins without a single complaint. That's when the bolt stops acting like a bolt and starts feeling just a little bit spongy. And that's the moment that you pause and go, oh no, this is gonna turn into a whole thing, isn't it? If you've wrenched long enough, you know that silence is the sound of a storm rolling in. Now all I can really do is hit those things with some penetrating oil, maybe add some heat from a map torch, though the cast iron sucks that heat away so fast it only really makes a difference sometimes, and use a lot of slow, steady pressure and patience and hope for the best. And when that fails, well, you'll see. Exhaust manifold bolts make me nervous because they're pretty easy to break. And if you break one, then you're pretty much teaching yourself how to weld. So I'm going to go ahead and spray those, let them sit for a little bit, and come back to this side. There we go. And there's removal of the oil dipstick. Just like a little bung that goes in there, just presses in. So on the passenger side, I actually stopped short on 2 of those bolts. I could feel that sponginess starting, and that's usually my cue to back off and let them soak for a little bit longer. Sometimes walking away is the smartest move you can make. Luckily, I didn't have the same fight on the driver's side. Those bolts all came out clean with no drama. Now, if you do break a bolt, you got a few options. And what you do really depends on what material you're working with and how much bolt is still sticking out. If you've got a decent amount of thread showing, you can sometimes get away with vice grips or grind a couple flats and put a wrench on it. That works sometimes, but if the head's already snapped off, chances are the rest of the bolt is still locked in there pretty good. Now, you hear people suggest maybe grinding a slot and trying to back it out with a flathead screwdriver, and yeah, I mean, that can work, but on bolts that are this stuck to begin with, it's usually pretty wishful thinking. Honestly, the best move is going to be welding a nut onto what's left. That gives you something solid to wrench on, and just as important, the heat from the welding helps break the bond when the threads are seized. A lot of times, the heat cycle itself is what actually does the work. Now, if that doesn't work, then you're down to cutting it flush and drilling it out, and that's not fun. It's not fast, but it is doable with patience, sharp bits, and a steady hand. It's just one of those jobs nobody wants with engine work, but everybody eventually gets. Ready to get them all? I did on this side. All right. Okay, let's come back over here. And that's what I was afraid of. Well, now I got some new content to share. This was the same way. And that is why exhaust bolts are scary. But there's one crusty old exhaust manifold off the engine. I tried, guys. I tried to do it without breaking bolts. I put PB Blaster on there and everything. I guess I could have heated it up, but luckily there's quite a bit of thread left. There's a lot of different ways to get those out of there, especially when you got that much thread. Here we go. Crusty old exhaust manifold number 2. All right, let me show you what I'm dealing with here, guys. A couple of busted off exhaust bolts. It happens quite a bit with older engines, I think. So luckily for me, there's a lot of meat here still on these. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this with some penetrating oil, let it soak for a while, and then I'll come back some other time and probably weld a couple of nuts on there. And that should give me enough bite that I can back them out, hopefully. Hopefully if they break, they don't break right up against the block, because that would suck. Again, luckily, I'm not inside of a vehicle, so it's not actually that hard to do in this case. If you're inside of a vehicle, it's a real pain in the ass, but it should be okay. I think welding a nut on the end is the way to go. All right. One crusty old thermostat housing. Oh, that's rough. And now for the water pump. That puppy's crusty too. Holy, I busted my socket wrench. Harbor Freight, ladies and gentlemen. Oh man, I don't trust it. Man. I'll break another one. Oh, not this one. I'll break another one. Come on. Well, it's just coming. I don't think it's doing it. Doesn't feel like it's moving. It's moving, but doesn't feel like it's moving the way it's supposed to move. Shit. Nope. Well, at least that one snapped off right inside. Can I get the water pump off now? Am I missing a bolt somewhere? All right, guys, I'm wrapping up for the night. But before I do, I wanted to look at what we got here. So I broke these two bolts here coming off the water pump. And it seems like that's kind of the ones that everybody breaks. These bolts here go straight through to the timing cover back here. So I think that's not uncommon for those to break. I tried to heat them up, but I mean, I've just got this little butane torch. I'm out of propane. My propane torch is not got propane in it, so I got to go take care of that. First things first is to get this water pump off. So there's 7 bolts. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the broken one. And the way that I'm doing this is just smacking it with a hammer. A little bit of percussive maintenance. Now the hard part is getting it off because those bolts are stuck. But now that I've got a little bit loose, I can get in there and gently pry from the back and get it out. So I'm gonna work on that and I will be back with you shortly. This guy right here is being a jerk. Why are you being a jerk, eh? There we go. Woo! Yeah, that'll do it. Old crusty water pump. So here we can see that I got the water pump off and I busted these two bolts right here. From my research, that's pretty common. These go into the timing cover. Gets corroded and kind of hard to get these out. So once I get, I don't have my torch ready to go. Once I get my map torch ready to go, I'll warm those up and try to get those out. Same thing over here on the exhaust side. Now the other side came off clean. This one I snapped two bolts. And with this one, I'll get these cleaned up and get a nut welded on and try to get that back off. But I'm not doing that tonight. So to show you what I took off, here are the exhaust manifolds. They're actually in pretty good shape. They're big and heavy and a little bit crusty, but there's no cracks. Does not appear to be any warping. So they should be salvageable. Get them cleaned up. They're not worth a whole lot, but they will be worth something to somebody if they're trying to rebuild a period engine, an old Windsor. Now I said during the first part of the video, these are the engine mounts. Obviously the mount parts I will keep and just replace the pads. The pads aren't super expensive, but I'll clean these mounts up and keep them. Thermostat housing and thermostat, basically trash. I mean, it's not really worth saving. Here's the old crusty water pump. Now, generally when you do a rebuild, you're probably going to end up replacing this. Water pumps aren't super expensive. This one's actually in pretty good shape. You can see back here, there's not a whole lot of corrosion. There's a couple of spots that are rough, and inside the water passages are kind of crusty, but nothing really major that I see that would indicate any kind of real problems with this engine so far. Now, when I took this off, I was kind of careful with it, so I didn't bust it and destroy it. But realistically, it's not really worth that much. These are probably, I don't know, $100 or something brand new. And this is a water temperature sensor or a coolant temperature sensor. Again, not really worth saving, so that'll go in the garbage pile. I got a garbage box back here I'm going to start filling up with all this stuff. And that is the entirety of day one. I spent most of it trying to wrestle those parts off. This evening, we're going to start working on getting the pulley off, the harmonic balancer off. And if I have time, I may start with the valve covers and the intake to get that, because I can access all that stuff without worrying about these bolts, which I will worry about once I get my torch. Did that work? Hey, it did. All right. Yeah, there we go. All right. Now, before I could get the crank bolt loose, I had to give myself a way to stop the rotating assembly from, well, rotating. With the engine on a stand, everything just kind of wants to spin together, so you need something solid to brace it against. That's why I bolted the flex plate back on. I don't need it permanently, I just need a way to lock the crank in place. It took me a minute to find the right tool, but in the end, a thick punch through one of the flex plate holes did the trick. Simple, solid, and it'll let me put real torque on the crank nut without the whole engine turning into a merry-go-round. All right, crank bolt out. And while we're here, quick confession, my first attempt at pulling the harmonic balancer was a no-go. Turns out I completely forgot the washer that sits behind the crank bolt. The balancer wasn't going to go anywhere because it literally couldn't. It's an easy mistake to make, especially when you're in a teardown mode and moving pretty quick, but it's definitely one of those stop and recheck moments. The balancer puller was actually starting to flex a little bit as I was cranking on it. So stop, step back, and reevaluate at that point. Once that washer was out, things went a whole lot more like you're supposed to. Easy peasy now. And that's the harmonic balancer sorted. You're that size. Are you all the same size? Hey, all right. I have impact wrenches and all that fun stuff, but I don't use them very much. I kind of just like doing the ratchet thing. I like being able to feel it, especially the very first time I ever do it. And I figure once I get more used to how things should feel and all that stuff, then maybe I'll start using the power tools more often. But to start with, I really do enjoy just using my hand ratchets. Now these valve covers are in really, really good shape. I'm not gonna save them for my build because I want my own sort of more custom covers, but these are in really good shape, so it might be worth something to somebody. There we go. All right, well, let's see what we see. And here we go. Oh. From everything that I can see, this looks like almost a perfect 408 rebuild candidate so far. I have not seen anything that's giving me any pause. You can see the varnish in here, which is totally typical, but it's nice and uniform. There's no weirdness in here. Nothing looks bent or out of true. There's no discoloration on here anywhere that would cause me any kind of alarm. There's a little bit of crud, but I mean, it's an old high mileage Ford truck engine. So, I mean, yeah, so far there's nothing in here that's really worrying me too much. So this is the moment where I stop and just take a look before pulling anything else apart. And to be honest, this is about as boring as it gets, which is actually really great news. Both banks look consistent. Same oil film, same coloration, same rocker height. Nothing jumps out, and that's exactly what you want to see. When something's wrong up top, it almost never hides itself evenly. One cylinder will usually tell on itself. If there was a problem, this is where you'd start to see it. You might spot one rocker that's discolored or blued from heat, which usually points to friction or oil starvation. You'd see uneven wear on the rocker tip, pushed way to one side instead of centered on the valve stem, hinting at geometry issues or even a bent push rod. Valve springs are another big tell. Broken spring is obvious, but a weak or collapsed spring is sneakier. One spring sitting lower than the rest or a retainer that doesn't line up with its neighbors is a red flag. Same goes for keepers that don't look seated evenly. That's a failure waiting to happen. I'm also watching here for oiling clues. Everything here has that normal thin oil coating. If you saw rockers or springs that look dry or heat stained compared to the rest, that's where you'd start suspecting oiling problems, but there's none of that here. As a matter of fact, some of these rockers even still had little drops of oil inside from the years that it's been sitting out in my backyard. So that's fantastic. And finally, it's about symmetry. Valve trains should look boringly uniform, just like this. The second one cylinder looks different color, different height, different wear. That's where you stop and wonder what happened to this engine. And in this case, like I said, nothing stands out. No broken springs, no discoloration, no weird wear patterns. Now that doesn't mean this engine is perfect. It just means nothing up top is waving a red flag yet. And that's exactly what you want before you keep tearing it down. Which is why I sounded so chuffed after I pulled the second cover off. Broken bolts aside, things are going really well for this build so far.
Now let's see if we can get this intake off. Hopefully the intake bolts aren't completely seized. I don't know, I started turning it, but I don't know that it's actually coming loose. What the hell? Did I snap it? I didn't feel like I snapped it. Yep. Frick. Snap that son of a bitch right off, right on the damn head. Ah.
So this is the point where the engine politely suggests a change in strategy. The first intake bolt started to feel spongy, and the second one snapped. And that was my cue that I was no longer negotiating, I was losing. When bolts start doing that, more force isn't bravery, it's optimism. What you're actually fighting is corrosion between steel bolts and a cast iron intake that's been heat cycling since I was in high school. And cast iron does not respond well to threats. So instead of leaning harder on the wrench, I brought out the torch. The trick isn't to heat the bolt, it's to heat the intake around the bolt. You're trying to make the hole grow, not the problem. Once it's hot, you let penetrating oil down into the threads and let it do what it does best, down where it matters. Does this guarantee success? No. But it turns a coin flip into better odds. And after sponging the first bolt and snapping the second, just on the intake manifold, I'll take every advantage I can get. Well, that's impressive. Huh. Heat, ladies and gentlemen. So this is what it looks like when you listen to the warning signs instead of arguing with them. After heating the intake and letting the penetrating oil wick in, these bolts actually start coming out the way they're supposed to. Slow and noisy and dramatic, but actually moving. You can feel the difference immediately. Instead of that spongy, soul-crushing flex, you get resistance, a little creak, and then progress. Okay, guys, I want you to see this. So clearly heat made a big difference. I did the first one cold and it just snapped like a twig. If you come over here and take a look, that is the gunk that's coming out of that shaft right there. At the very least, these are coming out clean so far on the rest of this side. So I'm not looking forward to trying to get that snapped bolt out of the head, but we do what we gotta do. We'll figure it out. I may have to do that one again. Oh, wow, that just popped right off. None of the bolts I heated snapped, not one. Same engine, same tools, same level of patience, just better physics. It's not fast, but this is one of those moments where slowing down saves you hours later. Sometimes the win isn't muscling through, it's changing tactics before the engine makes that decision for you. Ooh, look at all the crap coming out of there. Oh, that one's not rough. Yeah, look at that. Good stuff. And then there's this bolt, the one that didn't get the memo. I went back to it and did everything right. Heat, let it cool. Wick penetrating oil, gentle pressure, tap it with a hammer, heat it again. More oil, more patience, over and over. This was full on ritual mode, just hoping and praying it would finally decide to cooperate. But here's the thing. I think the damage was already done. That bolt was my very first attempt before heat ever entered the conversation. Once a bolt starts to twist internally, even just a little bit, you've already weakened it. After that, all the heat and patience in the world can't put the strength back. So eventually, physics wins. The bolt doesn't come out, it gives up, and it snaps. That's the real lesson here. Heat works, technique matters, but timing matters just as much. If you feel that spongy warning early, stop immediately. Because once a bolt starts stretching, you're not removing it anymore, you're just deciding when it's gonna break. I think I just busted it. Yep. I definitely just busted it. Son of a bitch. Little bastard. Oh, yeah. Ooh, that's crusty, but... all right, guys. There's the underside of the intake. All right, take a look at this. All right, guys. There is our lifter valley. There's a little bit of crud in here, but that'll all get cleaned out. At first glance, to my unexperienced eye, it looks pretty good. The only real issue is that I've got a bolt down inside the head here that's snapped off. And then I got one that's just sitting a little tiny bit proud right there that's snapped off. So I gotta figure out how to take care of those guys. But the interior of this looks pretty good. All right, guys. So last night I got the take off and exposed the lifter valley. Looks pretty good. I'll get you some B-roll of that here. Tapped off 2 bolts right here in the front doing it. Sure that we'll have to figure out how to get those out of here, but about that later. What I'm going to worry about right now is getting these quick rockers off and the rods out and just checking to make sure that they're all straight. And that'll pretty much wrap up the top end to this teardown. Look at that. By the way, I've got several bags here all made up and labeled with the cylinder numbers on them. That way I can keep the entire set together. So cylinder 1, cylinder 2, cylinder 3, so on, the rockers, push rods, and the lifters. So that if I want to come back and do some forensics later, I can. Now, it's not super important to me because I'm going to be rebuilding this into a 408, and none of this stuff is going to go back in this engine. But if you're doing a refresh or a straight stock rebuild and you want to reuse some of the stuff, you got to make sure you put them back in the right places. So I'm doing it just for forensics and to be able to kind of look back and have a history of what this engine was doing before. Your situation may vary, but it's always a good idea to label some baggies and keep things kind of together. Pretty. So this is the first one. We'll go through some more, but just to give you a quick look, for those of you guys who know what you're looking for, that's the lifter side. There's the rocker side. Here's the rocker itself. Looks pretty good. Rolls nice and straight. All right.
There we go, spider's out. Now we can pull the dog bone. Nice. And now we can pull the lifter. Nice, look at that guy. Oh, now I am not an expert, but that looks like that's in really good shape.
And now for the inevitable call to action. If you're enjoying the video, hit like, subscribe, or better yet, check out patreon.com/bullnosegarage. You'll see some neat behind the scenes stuff and even more of me, which is definitely why you're here, right?
Yeah. Looks really good here. Yeah, man, I don't see anything in there that be too much, just a little bit of varnish, but it actually rubs right off with my thumb, so yeah. Looking real good. What I'm looking for is any discoloration or any shape changing, especially here on the ends, mushrooming or anything like that. And I'm not seeing anything.
Most of these lifters came out looking great. Smooth, mirror-like rollers with no visible damage. That's exactly what you hope to see. A handful of the others had light surface marks on the rollers, but nothing that I could feel with a fingernail. Light surface marks are unusual on a used engine, and by themselves, they don't automatically mean lifter is bad. What matters is whether the wear is purely visual or something you can actually feel, and that distinction is huge. On a roller cam engine, once the hardened surface of the roller is compromised, that lifter isn't just worn, it's a liability. Instead of rolling cleanly on the cam lobe, it can start to slide microscopically, and that's how you eventually wipe out a cam. That kind of damage isn't just cosmetic. It's not something that improves with reuse. In a budget rebuild, lifters can be reused, even with light visible wear, as long as they go back in the exact same locations on the same cam. But the moment you can feel wear with your fingernail, that reuse window slams shut. At that point, you're risking the cam, not just the lifter. And just to be clear on the rules, if you're changing cams, you change lifters, always. These reuse guidelines only apply when the cam stays exactly the same and the lifters go back in their original locations. Flat tappet cams are even less forgiving. A mismatched roller lifter might cause problems. A mismatched flat tappet lifter will cause problems. And any visible or measurable wear is usually a deal breaker. There's no roller there to save you. Different designs, different tolerances, but the same inspection mindset applies every time.
Number 3, exhaust. That I can just barely catch my nail on. Number 3, exhaust lifter. And you can see there's just a little line right there. Like I said, I can just barely feel it with my nail. So this is like pretty much normal wear, I think, for a Windsor. Up at a high mileage, 30 years old. While compared to the other lifters, this thing is trash, right? Because the other ones are damn near pristine. But it would still be perfectly serviceable in a engine that's running on the road. So wouldn't want to put this back into an engine if you're rebuilding it. But yeah, there's nothing catastrophic going on here. This is the worst one that I've seen so far. I got one left. Oh, 2 lifters, 1 cylinder. And that's the worst I've seen.
And just to be completely clear here, when I said serviceable, I meant if this lifter was already running in that engine. Just because there's a fingernail scratch doesn't mean it's gonna wipe out the cam tomorrow. But that does mean I'd never reuse it in a rebuild. Once you can feel wear like that, it's crossed the line for reuse. In my case, I'm changing the cam anyway, so all of these lifters are shelf sitters or knickknacks. Maybe I'll give a couple to the kiddos for Christmas.
Oh, this one looks like mirror finish. Yeah, all right. Overall, this engine looks fantastic. I couldn't ask for a better rebuild candidate, a better 408 stroker candidate than what I have seen so far. There is no indications that this engine was ever abused, no indications that it was ever run dry, high RPM, overheated, anything like that. And the darkening, it looks just like aged oil that's coated all the surfaces correctly. Basically what you get from a 30-year-old engine patina. It looks exactly like what you would want for something like this. The big problem, I guess, is these bolts that all snapped off. I got a total of 6. 2 here on the front water pump and the timing cover. These 2 at the top of each head, and then the 2 over here on the passenger side head where the exhaust manifold was. Now, look, I could just take this stuff off and toss it, right? These are just regular truck heads. They're not anything special. I might be able to get a couple $100 for them, maybe. The timing cover is pretty cheap. It's basically a disposable part. I could just pull it and toss it. And so really, if I didn't care about the content or learning how to do this stuff, I could just toss this stuff, just pull it off and toss it, not even worry about getting these bolts out of here. But because I'm doing content for YouTube, and because I also want to learn, and I just taught myself how to weld, this is a perfect opportunity for me to see if I can figure out how to get these out of here in a situation where if I destroy these heads, oh well. If I destroy this timing cover, oh well. What I care about is the block. So this gives me a perfect opportunity to learn on a piece of hardware that I ultimately don't really care about. So, and also the nice thing is that they're completely different situations. These 2 are cut off real close. I got just a little bit of meat here, almost no meat here, a ton of meat over here on the side with these ones on the exhaust side, and a ton of meat up here. But up here, these are going into an aluminum timing cover, so the metals are dissimilar. And here, they were going through an aluminum intake, but now they're going into a cast iron head. And so that's a little bit different situation as well. So I can sort of use that to teach myself how to hopefully unstick bolts from different types of metals using different methods, heat and welding and putting nuts on it, and penetrating oil and all that kind of fun stuff. So we'll explore that in a different video. Once that's done, we'll flip her over, pull all the stuff off the bottom end, and take a look at the crank, at the camshaft, oil pan, and everything down on that side, the bearings, and take a look and see what kind of wear patterns we've got down there. So if you guys want to see what comes up next, make sure you like and subscribe. As always, thanks again so much for watching. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, gripes, and ramblings, stick them below, and we will see you next time. Hey guys, if you want to dig deeper into the builds, the side projects, and the stuff that doesn't always make it onto YouTube, or even just want to get to know me a little bit better, come hang out on patreon.com/bullnosegarage. Helps keep the lights on, beer fridge full, and the builds funded. Appreciate you guys being part of the garage.
She's rough around the edges, but she's doing fine. Tinkering away, getting things to shine. At Bull Nose Garage, she's considered divine. Thanks again for watching. We will see you next time. Thanks again